Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Set of Wild, episode 152, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name is Matthew, as usual. I'm joined by two good friends and co-hosts for the first time today. What's up, guys? Deep in reveal season, regularly scheduled content. How are y'all doing today?
I don't know how deep we are in the reveal season schedule, but fortunately we weren't very deep into that episode before your mic was realized to be muted. So I'll just repeat my same joke, and I'll say that, we've seen a handful more cards now, and I can say without a doubt that Showdown and Badlands is saved.
I don't know if I can repeat that same energy that I had. I was so excited about the NBA season kicking off, and I really brought it, and then Meowth kind of, put a damper on things. Sorry to expose you, Meowth, just throwing you out there to the wolves for the audience.
Look, I think it's better that you throw me to the wolves here than us have to re-record a 45-minute episode because I realized at the very end that my mic is muted. So I'm sorry, everybody that's listening, of robbing you guys of Corb's energy and Roffle's joke. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. You'll have to forgive me. I'll try better next time. But yeah, I mean, we're deep in, dude. We've already got like 45 cards revealed. That's like a lot. We're in there. We're in reveal season, deep into it. Before we actually talk about new cards, though, let's talk about what's going on right now. Let's talk about the present, and I guess like the very near future. So Blizz did announce the patch that's going to be happening on Thursday, and man, did they kill Druid! Thank God. So lots of nerfs coming in, and a couple of unbans in Wild to a couple of cards. Let's start. Druid getting like 2 specific class nerfs, but then all of these neutral nerfs that we're going to talk about as well, also basically targeted at Druid in Standard. But specifically, Embrace of Nature going from 1 mana to 2, and Rake going from 1 mana to 2. Druid has a lot of redundancy right now, but Embrace of Nature and Rake are 2 cards that stand out as particularly integral to the class. They're also both too efficient for their cost. Yeah, Rake was busted. These are the 2 most standout choices. Embrace of Nature and Rake, I mean, Embrace of Nature hits the hybrid Druid builds, but Rake, I think the most notable thing for Wild, big hit to Questline Druid, and to a lesser extent that hybrid build as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked previously about in slower Druid builds that like don't even incorporate any other hero power synergies. Rake was just a card that you played because it was so good, and so that's like, if it's a synergy card that's so strong that it's played outside of those synergistic decks, that it's probably just too strong of a card, right? Like this is designed with like hero power amplification in mind, and it just stands out on its own as a card, so it's just too strong. And Embrace was doing like silly things in increasing the consistency, and some of that was eventually like things move over to Wild a little bit slower, but it was spilling over into Wild too with like the hyper draw ramp Druid that we're starting to see.
Yeah, I have a little bit of mixed feelings about this patch, but they have really gone after Druid, and the thing is, though, I'm not mad about it, I'm not mad about it at all. Like, Wild really picked up a fat dub here by getting the Rake change. Like, there was a chance that maybe they only did the one, so, like, for Wild specifically, like, it's awesome that we had this, because, spoiler, like, 2 of the 3 best cards in Questline Druid just got hit, so that's kind of important. That's kind of a big deal, so can't be upset about that.
Yeah, big dubs for all the Druid haters out there in the universe, both Standard and Wild. Let's talk about kind of the next big one, and that is Yogg-Saron. So we talked about him last week. 0 mana Titan that does some really powerful effects seems really broken, and so they decided that it will never cost 0 mana. So it is going to be 9 mana flat, no discounts from casting spells or anything like that. He will always be a 9 mana Titan. But he does get a new passive ability that whenever you use one of his abilities, right, the Mass Hysteria, the Mind Control, the Tendies, Yogg also casts 2 random spells, fitting back into that good old Yogg, kind of the classic Yogg feeling. And so just to touch on the dev comments real quick, they wanted it to be a powerful, exciting marquee card for the mini set. Unfortunately, it ended up being too overpowered for too long. We're removing the cost adjustment effect instead of bumping up its cost for 2 reasons. We want the card to be played in more than just spell spamming decks, and this is the change we're most confident will land at the power level we want. So yeah, Yogg, is it safe to say that like a 9 mana Titan in any deck that's not Big Priest or Big Shaman is kind of dead in Wild?
Yeah, I mean the cost reduction is what was carrying the cost, right? The abilities and 0 mana are just like cannot you cannot be rationalized. Like that, you cannot allow those two things to coexist together. It's kind of silly that they did for as long as they did, but like 0 mana mind control, 0 mana mass hysteria, that's too strong. Like, and the decks that came out of it proved that to be true. Like it was very apparent very quickly that like it was too strong. Unfortunately, because of the patch timing, it took a while for adjustments to be made. But like, I kind of like this change. I talked last week about how it's a bad sign if like Yogg is a like a relevant part of competitive play, and he was. So maybe this will. I don't know. This brings him more in line with like the spirit of what Yogg typically is anyway, and isn't like a stupidly powerful card anymore.
Man, F this card, bro. I hate Yogg. I've been like, it's been festering the past few weeks. Yogg has been slowly inching up, and he got there. He got into my top 10 most hated cards of all time. I despise this little bastard. I'm happy that they've killed him. I love that they've officially put the word spell spamming into the official like Hearthstone dev lexicon. That gave me a little chuckle when they did that. But I'm so happy with this change. I'm so happy that we're not getting a like, oh, it's a 5 mana nerf. It goes to 20 mana, and it's like, oh yeah, we still play it on turn 4 in Rogue. No, none of that. 9 mana card, unplayable in Wild. Never have to see it again. Get out of my game. Until the big shaman summons it on turn 3, but we worry about that next patch.
Yep. I was about to say they killed this card in all the unfun decks, but they left this for the random big priest with Amanthul and Yogg. So that's got that going on for him. So
and
I'm so happy.
Favorite decks, guys. Meowth's favorites.
Yeah,
dude, I've actually had so much fun playing it. I can't even try to argue again. I've had so much fun. Dude,
I'm really scared of that becoming a thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dude, they preemptively nerfed Shadow Essence. Dude, they knew. They absolutely knew. I would also say that this was like the harshest nerf that we've seen in a long time until you scroll down in the patch notes and you see what they did to Jailer. but look, I'm with you though. Like this card was obnoxious as hell to play against. I'm so glad that they gutted it. I know people are out there and they're sad that Yogg got nerfed because they were finally happy for a competitive Yogg. There are people out there. There are people out there.
I
Screw
know
those people. I'm so glad it's gone, dude. I'm so happy.
I have heard those complaints, and what I have to say to you, I don't care.
Dude.
I don't care. Like your enjoyment of this card is not as great as the misery that it brought upon others, because like we talked about last week, it's one of those frustrating cards that punishes you for winning games of Hearthstone, and those are awful. So get out of here.
All right. I'm also ready for I know Corb has his tier list. I'm ready for the 64 March Madness bracket, just like they did for the best Hearthstone cards of all time, the most hated Hearthstone cards of all time. I'm ready for that Twitter poll.
Actually, man, that's a great content idea. Like, I'm gonna drop that. Let's do it.
You're welcome, dude. Just make sure you tag me and give me credit, and then you're good to go. Yeah.
Sorry, I think somebody already did that. They just named it the most broken Hearthstone card, and then it just ended up being the one that people hated the most. So it's over. Demon Seed won. It was just the original poster got the title wrong.
Side tangent, that bracket, some of those, like the round of 64 and round of 32 matches, I don't understand some of those results, but
again, it's because the title was incorrect on the bracket. If you just think of it in terms of what the title actually should have been, it's correct.
All right, let's finish talking about these patch notes so we can talk about some new cards. Before we get to what they did to the Jailer, let's talk about Prison Breaker. So this has been one of those cards that we kind of not really slept on, but we weren't really sure how impactful it was going to be when we saw it in the mini set. Turns out in the spell spammy decks, as they like the Blizzard devs termed it, it ended up being really, really good. Like a one-sided Dustbreaker that also hit the opponent's face seems pretty good. When you get to have it active on turn 4, turn 5, like Druid and Rogue kind of tended to do. It has now been nerfed to do 2 damage to all enemies. 2 damage is a lot less than 3. And so, do you guys think Prison Breaker's still seeing play?
It's tough to say with the context of Yogg being gone as well, right? Because like the decks that Yogg was present in were in part being amplified by the existence of Yogg, right? So you had it wasn't just that Prison Breaker was a very good card, and I think I can comfortably say I just completely goofed on this card. I overlooked it. I think a lot of people did. But it's hard to evaluate, not just because of the reduced damage, but because of the reduced incentive for just spamming spells, right? So now you have Arcane Giant, which is still very strong. And Druid has the owls and that kind of thing. So there is still incentive there, but you lose one of the main payoffs. So are those decks going to be strong enough to be as big of a part of the meta game while losing Yogg and while losing, a pretty big portion of what made Prison Breaker strong as well. So I think it's tough to say. It's still probably a good card in that type of deck. It's a matter of if those types of decks are good enough to hang on. But at the same time, like the 2 to 3 breakpoint we've seen historically is a big deal. A little bit more so than something like 4 to 3. Like that it becomes a pretty relevant deal. Like 3 health minions are pretty common.
Yeah, Prison Breaker was slowly kind of making the rounds in Wild. People started incorporating it a lot in Mill Druid, in the hybrid Druid, and man, it looked real good. Like, thank God, Wild players a little slow on the uptake. Otherwise, this past month could have gotten a lot worse. I think there's a very good chance that it could have been correct, even in something like Miracle Rogue. I would not be shocked at all if that was a thing that would have been quite good, and maybe that could have really done some damage to a matchup like Shadow Priest. But it doesn't matter, because to me the card is dead now. So I do think that breakpoint is way too brutal. I went through and I looked at a lot of the deal 2 AoE cards, and most of them really suck. The only ones that really landed for the most part were like the mage secret ones with Chatty Bartender and Flak Mage. But I don't know, 2 damage is such a brutal breakpoint in Wild compared to 3. Like, you've always seen that. It's really critical. So huge nerf. I think this is a bigger nerf than if Breaker went to 5. This is a bigger nerf than a mana change, and that says a lot. So card unplayable. RIP Prison Breaker. You never really had the chance in Wild to really shine.
Yeah, I 100% echo all those sentiments. I was playing a little bit of the OTZ Druid that he hit rank 1 with a little bit yesterday, and I was like, man, this 3 damage AoE on turn 4 is insane. Like, killing even shaman boards. 2 damage doesn't do shit to even shaman boards anymore. Like, it doesn't do anything. It's crazy. So yeah, unfortunately, I kind of agree with you that this card seems very unplayable now in Wild. All right, now let's talk about 2 cards that are definitely unplayable in Wild, and for good reason. Tony and Jailer have both been changed. So I'm going to run through these comments, or the changes in the comments, and then we can, pay our respects. Tony, 5 mana to 7, but his text has been changed. So instead of swapping decks with your opponent, replace your deck with a copy of your opponent's. Finale draw card. Tony is now unbanned in Wild. So he got the Elucia treatment while also getting a 2-mana bump. And so the dev comments here. When cards are causing problems when they're played the way they're designed to be played, that means they're ripe for a redesign. Piracy is not a victimless crime, and Tony only really appeared when he was causing problems. This change keeps the essence of his effect, but avoids the sharp play experiences he caused. I swear you could just take out the Tony and put in Elucia, and it would be like the same exact thing. Tony pretty much unplayable now, especially with the bump to 7 as well. I'm going to touch on the Jailer real quick because I think this is the hardest nerf I think we've seen in a few years, maybe. We all know what the old Jailer did. Destroy your deck. For the rest of the game, your minions are immune. Now, he only makes himself immune instead of your entire board. The Jailer is now unbanned in Standard and Wild. And so I'm not even going to read this dev comment. They wanted to kill this card and not really have it be playable, and I think they did that. So yeah, Tony and Jailer, they're both unbanned now. That means Wild is saved, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's that was the thing that was holding back Wild for so long, as Tony and Jailer. I think in particular they wanted to remove the interaction between Tony and Jailer because historically it's been pretty toxic. In Standard in particular, where you just delete the opponent's deck effectively permanently, because there aren't many ways to kill a Tony through a Jailer interaction. But it would still be pretty toxic now, where you just have a deck still or permanently have a deck still and immune minions for the rest of the game. So it's it's still kind of annoying to pair the 2 together. So I'm fine with this. I think Tony is maybe an interesting card with this effect if he's back at 5 mana in the future. In Wild, like I would play that card. That sounds fun to me. Like you know, you could still do goofy stuff with like Myra's draw a full hand and then play Tony. I'm into that without like the toxicity of like, I don't know, forcing your opponent into fatigue, which is not very well received from like a player perspective. So I don't know. These cards, what's the saying? These cards have had their time in the the shine. It's good to see them go. I don't care. Get them out of here. It's like the Yogg thing. Who cares? Get them out of here. They're dumb.
I was so sure you were gonna say like Harvester, like in Priest with the Tony. Like, does that work?
Sure.
I feel like, yeah.
I mean,
you
it's
do.
copies, yeah.
Yeah,
That'd
it's
work.
copies. Like that would be fun too. Yeah, no, I like that type of thing. I'm all for. Like, the reason I didn't say that specifically, you can already do that with Benedictus. It's fine.
Oh, sorry. Of course, yes, of
Yeah.
course, Benedictus. But yeah, no, they wanted to gut this completely. I mean, Tony's kind of a little bit of a weird card now, where it's kind of like an Elysiana. So like, if the meta ever goes like if we go to like a 4-step meta in standard again, and you know there's like control priest mirrors and that slow deadly archetype, he is going to be the fatigue tax because there's also going to be no Renathal. So like there is some slight risk there, maybe like in terms of, but I guess the thing is that you can't really get ahead in fatigue with this. It just sort of evens the playing field, so that does make it a little bit different, but it is actually like a fairly interesting goofy card, like if back at 5, and it's so useless at 7, but whatever. The people that are interested in this kind of thing are probably going to be fine playing it at 7. It'll be a very tiny portion of the play base because it's really, really bad. But yeah, Jailer was actually a card I was kind of looking forward to having another go at in Wild. I think for the Jailer in general can create fairly frustrating experiences for people, but in terms of the like fairness of it, in terms of the like what it does relative to the field in Wild, it's really not that bad, I think, in a vacuum. But now you won't be able to do it in things like Reno Paladin. I think Reno Paladin was a great home for the Jailer because
Would you be able to do it in Reno Paladin anyways now that the Tony's banned? Or like, I mean, not Tony anymore? Like, would you still be playing the Jailer stuff?
Well, you still have both, but like now you don't. Like, so that's the real big difference. And now it's just like dead as hell.
Is that a bad thing?
No, like I don't think it's the worst thing. It's just like I think the Jailer was kind of fine for Wild, and it did make those decks viable. But if it's dead, it's whatever.
Yeah,
like,
I agree. It doesn't seem like egregious in power level, but it wasn't like a fun thing to play again. So I don't think I'm sad that it's gone.
Like a line cracker, maybe, you know, like that kind of thing where it doesn't end the game so people get pissed off, but it's like in terms of like big context of Wild, it's like
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Linecracker is actually a really good comparison where it, like because it leaves stubborn people stuck in a game. It makes it more frustrating than its win rate would suggest.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, all of these changes kind of coupled together. The Druid dominance, both in Standard and Wild, seems like it's getting curbed as intended, with a couple of off target changes, right? To like Miracle Rogue because you're losing the Yogg, and I guess RIP Reno Paladin. Your only win condition is now gone. Any other kind of
Hey, Reno
your
Paladin
main
has some
win condition? All right.
No, the Thaddeus Ida's Holy Mackie thing. That's actually
that's
like
true. I forgot that Thaddeus change is real. Okay, regardless, in terms of normal Wild meta stuff, I mean, obviously the Druid and the Rogues are going to come back to the rest of the pack. Are you guys happy with these changes in terms of Wild?
I think to Corb's point earlier, it's maybe about the best we could have hoped for. Just because like we were assuming that the 2 miracle spell spam, or the 3, I guess you could say, the spell spamming decks were going to get hit just by Yogg, but we also saw the Prison Breaker get hit, which is, you know, was starting to pop up in Wild, and then most importantly Rake getting hit as well. So kind of like, you know, not deleting questline Druid by any means, but like certainly reducing its strength a little bit. So yeah, probably about as good as we could have expected going into the patch that was targeting Standard. Still hit quite a few of the problematic decks in Wild.
Yeah, this is an excellent add-on to the Wild patch that we got last month. Like, it's the the next piece in the puzzle. It's the next layer, if you will. So yeah, I think this is about as well as we could have expected. The Yogg change is excellent for Wild when you consider what the alternatives could have been. So like, awesome. Like the Rake change, excellent. Like little bonus on top. Miracle Rogue suffers a lot from this. The deck was very dependent on Yogg. I'm sure it'll still be somewhat competitive because it was before Yogg, but more in like probably a tier 3 type range. Questline Druid was looking actually pretty solid before Yogg, and then everything else has been gutted, but there's still like a big change, you know, like it's a big deal. So it makes Druid a lot more targetable as well, which is kind of like the biggest important thing. You don't have mechs, but you do have the ability to go wide on the board and feel a lot more comfortable. Like even like with early game aggro decks like Pirate, Rogue, or even Shaman, like there's going to be a lot more opening up for those types of decks to be able to actually beat the Druid now. So that's really important. So yeah, super happy with these. And F Yogg-Saron.
Preach. All right. One last thing to touch on real quick is that some of the anomalies have been removed from the anomaly pool. I'm not going to dive too deep onto this. We're not going to talk about it. Basically, though, the really polarizing ones have been removed from ranked play. So you're not going to see like the coin one or your minions or spells costing less. So it should remove some of the feels bads that could potentially happen with the anomalies. So, you know, I think the anomalies have had their time to shine as well. But
I just realized the anomalies are going to be in this upcoming Masters Tour. That's like this weekend, and I hope that we just get the absolute biggest shit show.
Me too. Me too. I think that's specifically why they removed these two, is going into the Masters Tour. But it's still going to be funny when they pop up, man.
Corb is obviously somebody who lives on Reddit, so he's ready. He's ready, and he's feeding for the Reddit post.
Like, once someone gets that +5 health, and then, you know, someone that switches who wins the game because someone's left at exactly 4, like, oh, it's going to be so good.
I can't wait.
All right, let's hop over to the cards from the new expansion, guys. Let's talk about some Showdown cards. So at the time of recording, we've had all of the neutrals, all of the priests, and all of the Death Knight cards revealed so far. And so we're not going to talk about all of the cards. We're just going to talk about some highlights, especially when it comes to the neutrals. So if we missed some cards and you're sad that we didn't talk about them, let us know down in the comments and tell us why we were wrong to skip over it. All right, so let's start with the neutrals, and let's start with the one drop, and that's Miracle's Salesman, which is a 1-mana 2/2 with the Death Rattle, get a tradable Snake Oil. So what this is you're going to get a 0-mana spell called Snake Oil. So it's tradable. Obviously, you can spend 1 mana to trade it into your deck to draw a card, but it also says deals 0 damage on it, which is potentially relevant if you can get some spell damage going, where that'll be 0-mana spells that deal some damage. It also, I don't know, we're getting Yogg nerfs, so I don't really know if the spell spammy decks kind of want something like this. But this is a card that has a lot of text and it does a lot of things, so I thought it was interesting to bring up. It is also, just like on its face, a 1-mana 2/2, which is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, as you were going through all of the text, I started looking at the numbers too, and it's like, well, it has a lot of numbers on it too. Why does this have so much stuff? So, like, it seems a little bit, it seems like a very strong, flexible card, in that you can play it in an aggro deck just to get a pseudo cantrip type card where you can cycle the Snake Oil through your deck because it has tradable. So, like, it's kind of like net one card off of it eventually. Like you get to split up the cost of drawing the card later. So that's interesting. Like you said, the spell spammy decks maybe don't have the same oomph without Yogg, but like we did just have Streetwise Trickster buffed, and as well as like the Razor Petals and those types of things. So there's like, I don't know, some interesting components there, but I don't know if it's necessary, like, because it's a Death Rattle. And because Wild is so fast, it's gonna be tough, man. It's by the time this dies, your opponent is already like setting up, their strategy, and this is just like giving you a support piece to your strategy, I guess, is my concern. So I think it's an interesting card. I think it's probably a strong card in Standard in certain contexts, but I don't know if it necessarily is like, hey, here's some, here's something that's going to spill over into Wild.
Yeah, definitely interested for standard, even in something like Sith Mage, where it's just like another damage spell that's super cheap, so that makes sense. In Wild, Undertaker support, yo. There's also like it is very funny in Shadow Priest because it would deal damage, I think, with Void Touch Attendant. It would go face for 1, so hell yeah, get that Moonfire in.
Would that work? Because isn't Void Touch's text like your damage
deals
deals
1 extra damage. Yeah,
but it's not. I guess it's technically dealing damage. It's just a zero amount of damage. Oh,
yeah, it's
okay.
dealing 0. Yeah. So I kind of enjoyed that. But yeah, probably not very good. I mean, it is like a 0 mana quest completing card in Quest Mage.
We got better cards to talk about for Quest Mage, I think. So
yeah, I'm gonna be repeating myself a bit on that. But yeah, I don't think it's probably good enough for Wild. But you know, solid-ish.
All right, let's pivot to talking about Beast Hunter, because you know that we stand Beast Hunter on this podcast. Let's talk about Bunny Stomper. This is a 2-mana 1/3 beast that says your beast have rush. That means itself as well. I don't know, when you pop off on your buzzard turn and then you play this and you give all your stuff rush, like it's kind of cool. It also works really nicely with stuff like Hydralodon. I'm gonna go to Corb here first. You're the Beast Hunter expert. How do we feel about this card in that deck?
I actually don't love it in Beast Hunter. Like it's not awesome. I think if you can get it down to 0 mana off the Harpoon Gun, I guess that's like pretty damn appealing on the pop off turn. But outside of that situation, I don't know. Like you already have like decent recovery a lot of time with Beast Hunter with the like Wound Praise or Spring Paws or Pelican Divers that all seem to like pop up in the list. So I'm not entirely sure if you really want this a ton. It's okay, but I don't think it makes it in.
Yeah, some of the struggles that Beast Hunter has is that it's very good at, or at least certain boards seem to be very good at like counter swinging the board back in board based matchups. But then that leaves a lot of cards stuck in hand in matches where that's like not necessarily the case. So like the Wound Prey, the Pelicans, those get the opponent pretty good, but they're also pretty fragile when they're not just like rushing into minions. So it kind of solves the problem the deck doesn't necessarily have a big issue with, like you said. It does enable a silly pillager like boar combo in Rogue though. You play a scabs into coin scabs into Baron Scavenger, and then you played and a Sonya. You played this and a bunch of boars, and that I think it's like a potential for like a turn 3 or 4. I guess it would be a 4. Turn 4, Sword of 1,000 Truths if your opponent has stuff to crash into with the boars. So that's kind of gross. It's like a new pillager type thing. It's a lot of cards that you have to have, but Rogue has a lot of draw.
Yeah, this is not going to be the first time on the podcast that we talk about maybe a 4-card Rogue combo that might be game breaking. So, you know, just kind of par for the course. I hadn't even heard about that combo, but that sounds kind of hot. Not gonna lie. Speaking of which, I still haven't watched that episode, so of South Park for the boars. Anyways, let's talk about next on my list. I have Dryscale Deputy. So the 2-mana 2/2 Naga battle cry. The next time you draw a spell, get a copy of it. I know we talked about Quest Mage a little bit earlier. The spell that you copy procs your quest. I know the fact that it's actually a Naga, I think, is a big downside to me in that specific scenario. I don't know if this makes the cutting Quest Mage, but I don't know if you guys have ideas about it elsewhere as well.
No, I think that like the upside isn't just that like you copy a spell for Quest Mage. It's that like the second layer of that is that a lot of the spells generate spells, so you get even more spells off of the copy spell that you spelled from the dry scale. So like you just kind of get a lot of value off of it. But like you said, I don't know. It ruins your ability to tutor Savara reliably is potentially a concern, and then it's also just kind of a 2-mana. You're spending 2 mana on this card to get value off of it later, when you could be spending 2 mana on a card that like immediately rushes down your quest. So something like a Rewind effectively does the same thing as this card already, I guess, is the concern, and you can like generate copies of Rewind in other ways. So tough to say, but I'm sure people will try it.
Yeah, I don't love it in Quest Mage necessarily. I just think that the deck has an abundance of options at this point. Even in the Reno version, I'm kind of a little like skeptical of this, but I mean, it's a very interesting card. It has potential to like break stuff open in the future for sure. I thought a lot about sort of like synergy with Vindicator, or trying to find other tutor effects that double up on discounting. So like with Ancient Mysteries, you get 2 copies of
Two copies of Ice Block Baby in Quest Mage.
Yeah, yeah, stuff like that. I thought, about prismatic lens type stuff. Like I don't know, it's kind of like some weird stuff that you can kind of start exploring with this. Even like Shadow Priest to get an extra copy of Mind Blast or Mindseer, like maybe. I still don't think it's good enough, but it's an interesting card right now, and it could potentially break something in the future.
Yeah, it's one of those cards I wanted to bring up because free stuff, right, is pretty powerful, especially when it spells. When a lot of things actually care about that. I also was thinking about it. I've been thinking about Quest Mage and thinking about lowering that curve a lot to incorporate maybe the next card here, which is the Greedy Partner, which is a 2-mana minion, 2/3 battle cry. If you're holding another 2-cost card, get a coin. So in a deck with like Ancient Mysteries and go really hard on the low curve with your Licensed Adventures, your Mailbox Answers, your Ancient Mysteries and Rewinds. I mean, this is just a 2-mana 2/3 get a coin for your quest, which that's never been broken and never been busted in Quest Mage. So yeah.
Are people still running Licensed Adventure?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I am. I don't know if it's correct or not, but I am. So
yeah, I feel like my concern is that you already have things that guarantee you the coin. Do you want something that's maybe a conditional coin, right? Because what if you top deck this after you've already played those cards that you just mentioned? Then it's just.
But if your deck's full of them, you're super likely
to
still have it active.
I know. So, but waiting to play a card is not a good thing in Hearthstone, right? Like if you draw this card and you cannot play it because it's not active, and you have to wait to play it. To me, that describes a bad card, especially in Wild. So I think it's like well below something like a Licensed Adventure and a Mailbox Dancer for Quest Mage in particular.
I think it's alright in Quest Mage. It's a coin maker. Like I think it does go in Quest Mage. But I would agree that I think License is a better card for sure. Mailbox, obviously has that tension where he can give the opponent a coins, which kind of sucks. So, but yeah, Greedy Partner, like I can see this going in lots of different things. Not just Quest Mage. I think Quest Mage is kind of the most obvious place, but I don't know. Like a lot of stuff in Wild wants to get to their pop-off turn earlier. Would you ever consider this in Quest Demon Hunter? Something like that. You just play it on 2, and then you can maybe coin a Glaive Tar a turn early or something. Like, would you play this in? I would definitely play this. I think in Even Death Knight. Just play it on 2. You have tons of 2-drops in your deck, and you can just like coin out a Power Spike turn earlier. I mentioned Prismatic Lens. Tip the Scales Paladin. That is another deck that would just love to be able to pop off and do that thing on turn 4 as fast as possible. So, I think this is a card that is a lot better in Wild than Standard because 2 reasons. 1, we have better power spikes. 2, we can push the curve lower typically compared to Standard. And so yeah, pretty good card to have in the neutral pool. I think it's one of the maybe the most impressive card in the neutral pool that we've seen. Well, I mean, I guess we've seen all the neutrals, or have we?
All right, we're gonna keep talking about 2-drops here. I have 2 more 2-drops that I want to talk about. A lot of good 2-drops makes that Greedy Partner value go up. I want to talk about Gold Panner, specifically for even decks and Call to Arms decks. It's a 2-mana 1/2, which is not great stats, but at the end of your turn, draw a card. Can happen multiple times. It's like the opposite of whatever Peasant is. I don't know. Call to Arms decks suck. Need help. Seems really good off stuff like Call to Arms. So, the 1/2 stats are the things that's really getting me. But if you can compare it to something like Novice Engineer or like Loot Hoarder, when you play those on curve, this kind of does the same thing. But this also has like the upside of drawing you multiple cards. So,
Yeah, I don't disagree with you that it's better than those cards. I think it's just we're past the point where those cards are playable in our format. I think is the concern, right? Like you would probably need to get 2 cards off of this to justify running it in your deck, and need to get 2 cards off of it pretty reliably. Which it dies to Prison Breaker, so clearly that's not going to happen. But I could see it in something maybe like an even Paladin, just because you can so readily buff it. So like just having a body in an even Paladin is beneficial. But I feel like you're just getting baited like you did with Papa Rome when he was first released.
Drawing cards is so good. So good.
But tempo.
Well, you get a 1/2, it's like infinite tempo compared to a 0/0.
Tempo better.
Tempo good.
Tempo is actually what wins in games in Wild Hearthstone in particular.
Tempo good. This card not good would be my assessment.
Damn.
Sorry, Meowth.
Damn. All right. Let's talk about Howdy Finn. 2 mana, 2/3 Murloc. Whenever your hand has less than 3 cards in it, get a random Murloc. So that means if this is a great top deck late in the game as well, outside of just being like a good 2-drop that keeps your hand full. I mean, tribal Murloc decks don't really exist right now and haven't for a while. Do you guys think that this, maybe helps push them back into relevance?
No, but I think it's something that could help in the future. Like, this is basically a neutral version, a worse neutral version of the Shaman card, right? And that Shaman card is Underbelly Angler, is been pretty busted at times, right? So like, you mix in some cost reduction with this, which Shaman has, so it's a little bit redundant there. And Murlocs tend to be light on draw, so this could be a good support piece if they get other good support pieces in the future. But like, this isn't the card that carries Murloc decks back into prominence.
Yeah, I mean, it can be better than Underbelly, so like, I don't know, like obviously in top deck mode type thing, it's a lot better than Underbelly. You get the 3 cards immediately. I don't even know if it's just Murloc decks.
You get 1 card immediately. If you have less than 3,
it will fill your hand 2/3. You will minimum have 3 Murlocs in your hand at all times.
It checks consistently. Okay, no, I'm misreading that. That is a
so like in theory, if you were playing Rogue with Secret Passage, you play this, you passage, and then you have 0 cards in your hand. Before your passage even like draws the 4 cards from your deck, it will fill your hand with 3 Murlocs. You'll draw your cards from your Secret Passage. You can like play your 3 Murlocs. Your Secret Passage will shuffle back in, and before you get your hand back, it'll give you back the 3 Murlocs. So it's like always checking at all times.
Right, you're saying Water Rogue is back.
Dude, that's exactly what I'm saying.
No, okay, that definitely means that it's a better card than I anticipated. But there are, 1, a lot of really bad Murlocs in Wild, and 2, like, if resource generation was the only thing Murlocs were lacking, then maybe, but that is very far from the reality, especially after like Flurgle went to 4 mana. Like, Shaman is where you would be looking at right now, right? Because they have Clownfish to reduce the cost and had Flurgle as well as the buff spells. But this is kind of solving a problem. Like, that Shaman is also the place where getting Murlocs into hand is the least difficult issue for the archetype.
Yeah, Murloc Shaman just doesn't have enough early game tempo. It just like falls to the other aggressive deck, specifically like stuff that has weapons, because Murloc Shaman does not have weapons, and maybe that'll change in the future. But I don't know. It's still like a really good card.
That's the ultimate insult to Cookie, by the way. How dare you?
Well, Cookie doesn't need to be insulted. Cookie knows what Cookie did.
Right. The problem with Cookie when it comes to Murloc Shaman is that the card doesn't exist. So, unless by accident.
But this card exists, but it's a good one for Shaman to have. It's also just interesting in like aggro Druid. Like, if you kind of think about it, it's sort of like a scuffed Voracious Reader. Like,
very scuffed Voracious Reader.
Well, I mean, yeah, but Murlocs are typically pretty low cost. In terms of like a 1-card hand refill, like, how good do you need it to be? It's a 2 mana 2/3. Like, it's already not that bad in terms of the cost.
You know what? As the only official Murloc Druid connoisseur. I think I approve of that. That is the deck that has on multiple occasions carried me to rank 1 legend. So I will approve that.
Yeah, Roffle approved message. I mean, it's also just good in Murloc Paladin. I know that deck doesn't really exist ever, but it's a good hit off of call terms as well. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Bounty Board. We were talking about 4-card road combos before. Scabs into Bounty Board into Tenmu into replay your Scabs, and then Zola your Tenmu, and you have infinite Tenmus to do the thing. Yeah, and then you could play not a Pillager, but like I guess an Edwin or something with payoff. A Draka, sure, infinite mana, but yeah, it all depends on your APM, I guess. It depends on how long the animations for all of that take. Not encouraging anything, but
you don't even need infinite mana really, because you can Zola the Scabs at the very last set. Oh, you can Tenwu the Zola for the last one, and then Zola the Scabs, and then play the. I think there's like some weird stuff you could do.
But then you can like bounce 3 Tenwus at a time, right? Theoretically.
Yeah, I can't remember. I don't know. I think there's some way that you end the combo.
I saw it somewhere mapped out, so I was just like relaying it.
Yeah.
There's a combo there. 4 cards, infinite storm, whatever for your Drawker, your graveyards, or whatever your Edwin. Do your thing.
Yeah, it's a very silly card. Like this will break something at some point in Wild. I don't think it's right now. Like I don't think that loop really does that much necessarily, and there isn't really the absolute final payoff that works for cheap after the infinite Tenwus. But this will break something. Like there's gonna be a slip up. There's gonna be some reason why something gets banned from this, because this is like, I mean, this could have been the Snip Snap card. Like this could have been the thing that accidentally made Snip Snap 0 mana after a portal. Like it could have easily happened with this. So there will be something that lets you loop tradables or legendaries. Because
in my haste, I forgot to actually read what the card does. But Bounty Board, 3 mana 0/5. Your Excavate, Quick Draw, tradable, and legendary cards cost 1 less, which is why you could do the infinite Tenwu things, because each of your Tenwus would cost 1 from the Tenwu, but then they get discounted to 0 off a Bounty Board. Yeah, forgot. Yep. I was so excited about road combos, dude. I forgot to read the card. So
I think the mentioning of like Snip Snap is a good look, because like you have a relatively innocuous looking card like Summoning Portal that then, like with the right support pieces or in the right context, enables some really really silly stuff. So like yeah, there's potential for this card to be pretty outrageous. One card that we did skip over that I wanted to mention, unless you wanted to go further on Bounty Board, was Whelp Wrangler. Like we've seen this card before and it was broken, right? Like it's
this adds the Whelp to your hand and not to the board.
Oh,
yeah.
Never mind.
This is a rating test. The first rating test of the expansion.
For those of you wondering, 2 mana 2/3 at the end of your turn, get a 1/2 Whelp with taunt, because it says get not summon. That means it's adding it to your hand and not onto the board.
I'm staying on this. That's a great card for hand buff Paladin, which means we can move on to the next card.
Yeah. They have started throwing out this get word. I did look back. Like they didn't really used to use it that much, but they've been using it with like Awaken the Makers. It's like get some 4/1s and stuff. So, it was getting familiar with the new Hearthstone vernacular. I like it. Get. It's pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
Clearly it doesn't create any confusion at all.
No, of course
absolutely not. All right. I have one last comment that I want to talk about. I love how we talk about all of these 2-drops, and then the last one I want to talk about is Azerite Chain Gang. Which is a 4 mana 2/3 with taunt, battle cry, and quick draw. Summon a copy of this. So basically just power crep Serenite Chain Gang, because it also has the upside of if you top deck this and want to play at the same turn, you get 3 2/3s instead of just the 2 from Chain Gang. I don't know that there's any deck out there that's still playing Chain Gang. So I don't really know how much play this will see. But if you have been playing Chain Gang, like if you're still that one person out there playing infinite combo Shutterwalk Shaman with life drinkers and stuff, replace your Chain Gangs with this one, your Serenite Chain Gangs with Azerite, and then you're good to go. But
it's honestly one of those decks that people are always going to be playing. So like this is always going to be relevant. And like there were times where Serenite Chain Gang was, a useful card in Evolve Shaman, and this is just better into Evolve Shaman. So if there's ever more, obviously this alone, kind of like the Murloc, doesn't bring Evolve Shaman back, but if there's more incentive to play Evolve Shaman, that could be something that you see a little bit more of as well. Curves nicely before or into a Brass Knuckles or something. So it's, there are some other uses outside of that, but it's also just a lot of stats, right? Great for hand buff Paladin.
And with that, I don't know if Corp actually wants to say anything, but he said hand buff Paladin, so I have to transition to the next thing. So, no.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to transition this into a short break unless you guys have anything else you guys want to talk about here, because the rest of these neutral cards seem not very fun, exciting, or good. So, I mean, it's time to move on.
Ogres look fun.
They look cool. They don't look good. So,
yeah. They look fun.
So, all right. With that, we're going to take a short break. And we'll come back and we'll talk about some more Priest and Death Knight cards. All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's talk about some Death Knight cards. So Death Knight, dude, we're getting some Rainbow Death Knight support. I know that's all our favorite thing here in Wild. And so, I mean, let's just kind of go through these really, really quickly. So we got Fistful of Corpses. This is a 1-mana spell, blood and unholy requirement though. Deal damage equal to a minion equal to your corpses. The whole to a minion thing makes me sad because I feel like
it's a 1 mana Meowth. Come on.
Look, dude, the card's unplayable otherwise. Come on.
Corpse explosion with the patrons on board and to just throw a fistful of corpses, that's absurd.
I'm okay with that, dude. I'm okay. Death Knight needs something that's not even Death Knight. Like, come on. I say that like if it was actually competitive, I'd be really mad. But
yeah.
But nah, Fistful of Corpses. You guys want anything else to say about this before we move on?
I think it's a good card. Am I crazy? Like that's efficient removal. We've seen that in Priest, right? It's effectively
if you're playing in a one,
spell.
It's 1 mana, so you're not playing in an even shell, which means it's going to be not super effective at gaining corpses. So
look, I'm talking about
it's not killing the Ship's Cannon on turn 2. It's not killing the Void Touched on 1. Like, is it doing anything early in the game when you need it?
We frequently evaluate cards based on how much potential they have in the future, and I think that this is efficient removal for 1 mana, something that like plays that Death Knight does have a fair amount of, but like if there's ever more incentive than CNE to like diversify your runes, I think that this card could be a potentially strong piece in the future. And like this set, one thing that I will say is, like you mentioned Rainbow Death Knight, but it is printing a lot of like 1 and 2 mixed rune cards that does incentivize some of that multi-rune deck building that people have been asking for a while. So maybe that becomes a trend and this becomes an efficient removal spell in the future. Or maybe I'm just like huffing on way too much copium.
My prediction for the Death Knight set is that a lot of these cards are once again gonna have to have their rune requirements changed and removed, and they're gonna drop the sort of dual rune requirement. And at some point in this expansion, we're gonna have a big buff patch for these cards, and there's gonna be a big discourse on Reddit and Twitch and Discord and all that about the fundamentally broken part of runes in Death Knight, and whether the class needs to have a real big look at itself, because I think that's just what's gonna happen. Like I just think the requirements are too harsh in terms of the deck building costs associated with this stuff, and these cards aren't strong enough by themselves. I mean, obviously in the context of Wild, whatever, we're really looking at the even cards a lot of the time, but it's really how I feel about a lot of these cards, is that the rune requirement is too harsh, and it's gonna be a big conversation at some point this expansion.
We talked a little bit about the excavate mechanic and how Death Knight was going to be one of the classes that kind of took advantage of that. It was one of the kind of core mechanics. Last week we talked about Harrowing Ox and Reap What You Sow, which were excavate payoffs, and a card that does that. Let's talk about the other 2 cards here that we've gotten. So we have Pile of Bones, which is a 2-mana 2/1 undead with Frost unholy requirements. Death Rattle, the next time you excavate, resummon this. And so kind of like infinite 2/1s, which is kind of cute. A little bit of a payoff there. And then we also have Skeleton Crew, which is a 4-mana 3/3 undead with a single frost rune requirement. Battlecry, excavate a treasure. It costs 0. So it looks like if you want to be excavating in Death Knight, you're in 1 unholy, 1 frost minimum, right? Splashing the 3rd, whatever you want it to be. I mean, Pile of Bones seems pretty good. Skeleton Crew, Seems good if you're excavating the legendary, the big payoff. And so, how are we feeling about excavate stuff?
Do we know if Pile of Bones like goes dormant? Does it take up a board slot when it's waiting to be resummoned, or does it just come out of thin air if you have the board space?
Oh, I do not know.
Because that to me is what this wants to be is in like a board swarmy deck, and that's a pretty critical component if like you're limiting your ability to swarm outside of it. So I'd hope that it just poofs into play. If that's the case, then maybe that is okay. But like, I think excavate in general is probably, at least in Death Knight, going to be a little bit too slow for Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it would go. I assume it would kind of go dormant. That's typically how stuff like this works. I have to imagine, but yeah, because like, what is like, but like something like Sharazin, what does that say? That actually says like be dormant, right?
Yeah, it says go dormant. Same with like Thorbalor and things like that. It specifically says.
Yeah, so I guess not. I guess like because it doesn't. Or yeah, the warrior card, right? That one says go dormant. So yeah, I guess it just puts into play.
Yeah, we also haven't talked about the legendary treasure that you can excavate, so I think we should probably note that, and that's the Azurite Rat, which is a 4-mana 5/5 elemental beast, battle cry, resurrect your highest cost minion, give it +2/+2 reborn and lifesteal. Pretty insane payoff if you excavate that 4th time. So very much an incentive for you to do the excavating stuff.
Yeah, well, it's just the nature of excavating is that it's inherently slow developing.
Something that's kind of an interesting synergy with this is Death Growl.
Because the 8-mana 5/1, right?
Death Growl the Pile of Bones onto other minions.
Yeah, and you could do some very silly things with that probably.
Yeah, no, that is interesting.
All right. I mean, excavating in general.
Yep.
Yes or no?
Oh, bad. And wild.
Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine.
It's because again, it's the nature of excavate. Without severe mana cheat like more than Skeleton Crew, like excavate is going to be quite slow.
Yeah. There's not enough even cards that excavate either, which is obviously something like the first thing you look at. But yeah, there's not quite enough. So sad times.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna talk about a couple of other cards here, really quickly. We have Corpse Farm, which is a 3-mana 1 unholy spell. Spend up to 8 corpses to summon a random minion of that cost. Dream Curve, Plague Rain, Corpse Farm on 3 to summon a random 8-drop. Boom, wins you the game.
And then you get a 3/8, and it does nothing.
Oh, you get a whole 3/8. I get a 1/1 Hyrule the Bat off my Corpse Farm.
We have it's good.
We have Crop Rotation, 3-mana 1 unholy spell. Summon 4 1/1 undeads with rush that die at the end of the turn. I mean, it's like bees, except you don't get to keep the cards, and it's also worse than bees because it doesn't bypass taunt. So,
but you also get to choose the targets on the trade. So
yeah, you can split it up. It's
probably fine in your Rainbow Reno Death Knight. Boom.
Generates a lot of corpses for Fistful of Corpses.
It does do that, yes. But it doesn't do it on turn 1, so card's obviously useless. We have Farmhand, 3-mana 4/3 undead, 2 unholy rune requirement. Battle Cry, discover an undead. Quick draw, it costs 2 less. I feel like we've had the discussion multiple times where undead minions kind of suck. So even if you're getting like a discount on them, I don't even know that it's worth. So yeah. All right. Let's move on to the 2 legendaries here. We have Maw and Paw. If you guys haven't seen the art for this, I highly recommend checking it. It's great. 4-mana legendary minion for a 1/8 undead, 1 blood rune, 1 unholy rune requirement. At the end of your turn, gain 5 corpses. At the start of your turn, spend 5 corpses to give your hero +5 health. That's got a big butt as well, so it's not gonna die very easily, and it feeds itself, right? If you're not doing any other stuff, it's feeding itself. Again, this feels great in your Reno Death Knight decks. Do we like this anywhere else?
I see what this card is, and it's just not for Wild. What it is it's a way to spend corpses in Rainbow Death Knight so that you can actually do something with CNE. The problem is that like in Wild, getting to that CNE is the hard part, not necessarily spending the corpses. So it's it's an interesting card. I'm glad they released it. I don't think that it's Wild playable.
It's so weird. It's such a weird card. The stat line's weird. The effect is weird. It's bizarre. The art is weird. It looks like, you know,
The art is great, dude.
it's strange.
The art is great. That's a famous painting.
Yeah, I know, but like for Hearthstone, it's just like very like whoa. That's
Well,
like
it's very Hearthstone, right? Taking something so like.
No, that's this card is peak Hearthstone as far as I'm concerned.
I'm just a
Especially
little
the
sad
art.
it's on an unplayable card for a while because that means we're not going to see it very much. All right, the actual playable Death Knight card here though for Wild. Let's talk about Reska the Pit Boss. 20 mana. Whoa, dude! Did I just say a 20 mana card's playable in Wild? Wow. 1 Unholy, 1 Frost Rune requirement for a 6/3 undead minion. A lot of text here. Rush. Cost 1 less for each minion that died this game. Important to note, it counts enemy minions as well, and it counts while she's in the deck. Okay, so you can top deck a 0 mana Reska, the Pit Boss. She also has a really powerful Death Rattle that you might have seen before. Death Rattle. Take control of a random enemy minion. So, theoretically, 0 mana 6/3 undead with Rush, Death Rattle Sylvanas effect seems pretty strong in your even Death Knight decks. I guess the issue is that you would have to not be triple unholy because that means no grave strength. Is this card powerful enough to consider cutting that card, or are we down to no playables for Death?
I don't know. I think it's worth at least considering. I don't know if necessarily it's an upgrade over. It's probably not an upgrade over Marrogar in most cases, right? Because if you assume you've had 20 minions die, you've had a lot of corpses banked for the Marrogar, and that's going to be a game-ending threat. This is a nice support piece, but not a game-ending card like Marrogar is. That said, I think it's strong and has potential again in the future, especially in something that like maybe is looking to make use of a crop rotation or a fistful of corpses. So if they keep beating this Rainbow Death Knight in the future, I think it's a card that can go to 0. I think that's always worth taking a look at. It's got some consideration with Death Growl. It's a huge tempo swing. You can give a reborn. You can do all the kinds of stuff. So I think it's one to keep an eye on, but maybe not immediately super impactful.
Yeah, Death Knight is the class that is most restricted in terms of, like choosing the cards you can play before you even like really think about what you're doing with the deck builder. Like it already filters out so much because the mana happen to be even, and then, you kind of can only really play with the unholy cards when you're talking about like the competitive stuff, because it's hard to see this being better than Marrogar, Grave Strength together, even when you do think about picking up some very other good cards like the Saurian. I forgot how to say it. The 4-drop. That card's really good. But it's probably still going to have to be triple unholy for even Death Knight. This is super powerful. Awesome card. Works so well with Excavate, with the rat. As the highest cost minion, resummon, give it reborn. That's crazy. Lifesteal, that's awesome with the rat. Like, it's perfect. It's obviously the intention of the card. It's just you're probably not going to see a lot of that in Wild. So, we'll see. Again, this might be a card that I can definitely see them just like, just dropping one of the rune requirements. Just where'd that Frost rune go? Like a month and a half, 2 months into the expansion. We'll see. And then if that happens, it's very, very, very exciting for even Death Knight. But until then, I think Marrogar's is too good, dude. Marrogar just, like Roffle said, it ends it. It's a game ender.
All right, summing up the Death Knight class though, 0 out of 5 scale. What number are we giving it for Wild, obviously?
For Wild,
are we bold enough to give it one of these?
I mean, I won't give it 0 because I think that it can still use the neutral 2-drop coin maker, so I'll give it a 1 out of 5 for Wild. But I mean, like every set's gonna suck for Death Knight. Death Knight needs to be judged on a curve, man. Like it's not fair. When it doesn't have the pool that everyone else has.
My opinion of the Death Knight set is heavily, heavily clouded by the fact that I've been playing a lot of duels. So I see these cards and I'm like, That looks fun, man. So, so I don't know what to tell you. These look fun to me.
I think they look fun. I just don't know that any of them are going to be competitive. I think it was just my issue normally when it comes to Death Knight stuff, which is
That's fair.
Very unfortunate. All right, let's pivot here. Let's talk about some Priest cards. So Priest has one of their sub themes being one cost matters, which is a really weird thing for Priest. So let's start with kind of this cycle of, I don't know what to call them. I'm going to call them bottle cards, but there has to be a better name. But we have Holy Spring Water, which is a 2-mana holy spell that says restore 8 health to a damaged character, save any excess in a 1-cost bottle. So for all of the spells that I'm going to talk about, the excess gets stored in a 1-mana spell, and so it'll say, okay, 1 mana, restore 4 health to a damaged character. Because if you only healed 4 off the 2-mana spell, your 1 mana spell is going to cost 4. So all of them are going to work in a very similar way. You have Invasive Shade Leaf, which is a 4-mana shadow spell that deals 8 to an enemy minion, saves the excess in a 1-cost bottle. And then you have Swarm of Lightbugs, which is a 5-mana spell. Summon 10 1/1 Lightbugs with lifesteal, save any excess into a 1-cost bottle. So kind of like the 3 core things, board, healing, damage. And then you have one of your big payoffs. You have Pip the Potent, 4-mana 3/5, Battlecry. Copy each 1-cost card in your hand. So obviously it works with the bottles, but works with any other 1-cost spells that you might have lying around in the huge card pool that is Wild. So she seems like a very potent legendary. And then you also have a nice payoff here with Thirsty Drifter, which is a 6-mana 4/6 taunt. Costs 1 less for each 1-cost card you've played this game. 0-mana 4/6. Seems pretty good. So yeah, guys. 1-cost Priest, which is every Wild deck.
So, yeah. That's what every Wild deck wants to be, is a 1-cost deck. I think that like the bottle cards or whatever you want to call them, those don't seem terribly appealing. They're flexible. Flexible isn't good enough in Wild oftentimes. Pip also has maybe some appeal. You could copy Inner Fire. You could copy Potion of Madness. That way you could Potion of Madness, Inner Fire combo, and then save the remaining copies for next game. But it does give you like the flexibility to go in over the course of multiple turns, because like 3 of your primary combo pieces are 1-mana spells, right? Wave, Potion, Inner Fire. So like maybe you could use one as a clear as a result of Pip. Probably not something worth running as a result. So I think like the big standout here is the Thirsty Boy, because anything that can cost 0 is an appealing card to consider, right? He's got a nice stat line, and he can come down with taunt at 0 mana. So if there's a deck that can get enough 1-mana cards to justify that, like that's the payoff.
Yeah, Thirsty Drifter definitely the most obvious like strong payoff that we have here in Priest. Like I think it'll see play in Shadow Priest. You know, just ditch some of the 2 costs that are already kind of the more mediocre cards in the deck, like Ship's Cannon and Cult Neophyte. Place them with, I don't know, like a Leper Gnome, an Iron Deep Trog. Iron Deep Trog and Cult, they're kind of the same thing. Whatever. Like, you'll get your Drifter down on turn 3, turn 4 for very low mana cost a lot of time. That's really good. The Priest set is always weird. Like, Priest always gets the weirdest, trickiest sets to evaluate. I think that's pretty universally true. Like, I think it's just hard to evaluate Priest stuff. For me, personally, like, it's really complicated. Like, I always suck at evaluating Priest stuff, because Priest just makes use of weird stuff in weird, unexpected ways. Just kind of the way it works. But some of the things that stood out to me, Holy Springwater being a 2-mana deal 8. No, I didn't say heal 8, I said deal 8, because if you play it with like Phantasm, Embrace of Shadows, the card that came out last set, the Cavaldeer, like your next healing card deals damage instead, that becomes 2-mana deal 8, and that's a lot of damage. That's a ton of damage. There's also stuff you can do with Pip, like again in that sort of Embrace healing deck, where Pip can copy up your Flash Heals, your Renews, your Light of the Naru, your all that kind of stuff. Or if you have like Palm Reading and discounted Springwater, it could copy your Springwaters, and then all of a sudden, you know, we're looking at a lot of damage potentially. So I think Pip is very, very interesting with combo potential. Holy Spring Water is very interesting as combo, but also is just like burn damage. So I really like that. And yeah, and then in addition to that, I think Thirsty Drifter is kind of the most obvious card that is very good for the preset. So Overheal stuff is a little hard to make work in WoW because we lost its best card in Clergy. You know, it happens, but some of the other stuff is pretty appealing. Less focusing on the bottles, but like more focusing on the going face and killing people.
Yeah, going face tends to be good in this format, so I've heard. Also, last potent joke, I swear, but you guys are missing the most potent combo with Pip, and that is raise deads to put 2 Astral Automatons in your hand, and then play Pip to copy all your Astral Automatons, and then play more Astral Automatons, and then, you know, you do the thing. But it also means you're playing second minion in your deck, so don't do that. But, I don't know. I agree with you. In general, about the preset, but also about all the other evaluations of the cards. I think Spring Water being 2 mana deal 8 is actually the most interesting part of that card, not the whole healing thing. All right. We also have Elise, which we talked about last week, which is a Highlander payoff card. I'm going to mention the card Tram Heist, but don't even bother reading this card or worrying about it because it's absolutely garbage and unplayable in every format.
Hey, it's
don't
really
even
good with
don't you dare. No.
You play the Tog Waggle and they can't ever swap it back. It's even Hemmet proof, so you can just Hemmet to delete your deck, and then you just have Tog Waggle and Tram Heist. What are they gonna do?
We have Posse Possession, 4 mana shadow spell. Summon a 4/4 copy of a random minion in your opponent's hand. I thought we were about to get 4 mana Shadow Essence. I was kind of excited. Yeah. Posse Possession. Especially in Wild with super synergistic minions seems not very good.
I think Tram Heist is a much better card than Posse Possession. What are we
That's
talking about here?
That card's bad. All right, and then we have 2 3-drops. We have Benevolent Banker, 3 mana, 2/4. Battlecry, discover a spell from your deck. Quick draw, enemy deck instead. So on the surface, this is a 3 mana Thrive, right? 1 mana for a 2/4 attached to your Thrive. You obviously lose out on the spell synergies that you get with Thrive, like Palm Reading and Lover Everlasting. 3 mana 2/4 discover a spell from your deck doesn't seem the worst thing in the world. It's kind of funny that the quick draw feels like a downside with this card because you generally are going to be wanting to discover cards from your deck rather than your opponent's. But
it does yoink the card though, so like it removes it from your opponent's deck. It would be probably more relevant if it were minion because there are like more single card minion win conditions than there are single card spell win conditions. That was probably intentional. But it does like actually remove the card from their deck for whatever that's worth.
Would have been really nice when we still had Tony Druid and stuff flying around the format. So yeah, I don't know. Still, a Benevolent Banker.
No, I'm with you. I think most of the time, like the quick draw is a downside. You would rather have a card from your deck than your opponent's deck if you're just like drawing a card, right? So, weird way to disincentivize quick draw.
I can maybe see it in Reno Priest, like maybe.
I feel like we can say that about every card though, with how Reno Priest are built these days. So
yeah, but like
yeah,
having a third copy of like your Thrive / Shadow Visions, it's not terrible.
Or even just for the disrupt aspect. Like I know that's like maybe a downside, but for Reno Priest it might be fine as well.
It is like it's the first time you're actually discovering a card from your opponent's deck too, so you get choices on that. It's just like what spells are going to be relevant to disrupt, I guess is the thing. Celestial Alignment maybe, but they always have that in hand anyway.
Symphony of Sins, you're missing the obvious one. Sorry, Luna's Pocket Galaxy.
Nobody's playing Symphony anymore because of
but they will once Yogg gets nerfed. Come on. All right. The last card that we're going to talk about today, we have Injured Hauler. Poor Injured Blade Master getting power crept. What is this? Hearthstone, come on. 3 mana, 3/7. Battlecry, deal 4 damage to this minion. Overheal, deal 2 damage to all enemy minions. Some Overheal synergy. It's really hard for me to get excited about Overheal because, like you mentioned, the best reason to play Overheal is not legal in the format because Clergy is kind of banned. And so because of that, it's really hard to be excited about Overheal cards. So I don't really know where to go with this.
Straight into the trash can is where you go with this.
Feels bad.
Yeah, it's tough. It's real tough. I mean, card's pretty good if it like comes back up and animate dead or whatever. But man, overheal stuff it's rough.
Yeah, bring back clergy. Come on, Blizzard. Just ban the funnel cakes. All will be okay. All right. Just like with the Demon Hunter set. Sorry, not the Demon Hunter. Death Knight set. Dude, it's been like 2 years at this point. I still keep doing that. 0 out of 5. How do you guys want to rate this preset? All right, excited? There's obviously you talked about Springwater, Thirsty Drifter, Pip, and there's a Reno card in here, so it obviously has to be higher than what we gave for Death Knight, right?
I'll be honest. After I don't know how to assign number values, so I'm not going to. But like, I think it's for the content. I think it's more interesting after this discussion that we've had than I initially thought. Things like I missed the Holy Spring Water. I missed the potential like Tog shenanigans with Tram Heist. Like that's interesting.
It's not real, Roffle. Don't do it. Don't subject yourself to that.
I mean, there are already ways that you could like you already have Murazond and that kind of thing. So obviously it's not real, but like it's new. It's interesting. I just completely never saw Pip the Potent. So like again, this discussion is made me feel a little bit better about Priest than I was going into the call.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to be like too harsh on sets in general because it's very easy for like a lot of cards just not make it in a wild. But the fact that the preset has me thinking, it has me like deck building. I'm assigning kind of like a 2.5 or a 3 out of 5. I will assign the value
for the content. I appreciate it.
But for Meowth, not even.
It's for the content, dude, so that people can judge you in 6 months when you come back and listen to this, and they're like, "Wow, you gave this broken preset a 2 out of 5. You're crazy."
I think I'm gonna have to give it a 3 at the minimum because I think Thirsty Drifter is just way too strong, and the other cards are interesting. So there you go.
Drifter definitely seems like it's going to be a staple, just in kind of aggressive pre-stacks. I'd be interested to see the combo potential. Like you've mentioned already with Springwater, but I'm wondering if like Pip kind of helps that. I mean, just copying stuff. Do you have enough 1-mana spells like you just want to play this and copy like 2 power word shields, and now you have 4 power word shields, and that's like good enough in a certain style of deck potentially. And then obviously Elise is Highlander payoff cards, so people are gonna love that. I still haven't found like a really good way to abuse that card, but
the way you abuse it is that you play it on turn 8 on curve, right, and then you get a whole bunch of tempo and you say, "Wow!"
But like, what if they're just vanilla minions? Is that even worth it? I know we have this whole discussion of tempo good, but is it even worth it?
The way you abuse this card is you get a bunch of stats.
You play an 8-mana 21/21.
I think if you bend over backwards trying to like get perfect value off of this card, you make your deck worse, and that's like a thing that you want to avoid doing.
Arena Priest players have no problems doing that though, so
there might be a couple cards for Elise that are kind of on the fringes that you obviously swap in because the Elise. Like a card that comes to mind might be like Ziliax, which is not great at all in Shadow Priest, but it already works okay with like Cathedral, so it's not like the worst thing to have. And then obviously off the Elise, it's very, very strong. So like maybe Meowth, we can get that. Maybe we can just sneak up that power level that little bit to make you feel better about it. And you'll continue to play it on curve and get 4 vanilla minions, and you'll be happy about it.
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, you're not wrong. All right, which is like the worst part. So
you play it on curve, you get 3 vanilla minions, and either the Colossal or the Titan, and you're ecstatic, right? Like that. So you don't need to change your deck building for that. You just like play the cards that are already there. I think is.
Yeah. What if we play the newly buffed Awaken the Makers, and so we're also playing some Death Rattle stuff to help buff that. And then
I go back to my previous statement and say you're making your deck worse. So
do not pass go. Do not go past.
Oh, my bad. All right. So 2 classes and all the neutrals. I know I saw some people not super high on the set when we just saw the neutrals, which was like bold of you to make statements like that, guys, when we've only seen the neutrals. But even then,
it's almost like they're neutrals.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's also very bold of people to make that claim after we just saw Prison Breaker slip through the cracks. So like even the most recent memory should be like, hey, maybe I shouldn't underestimate neutral cards.
We just had 4 neutrals nerfed, by the way, in the latest patch. So.
Right. And still people can't help themselves but like assume that things are going to be weaker than they inevitably will be. Again, but this is especially true of wild players, where like we just need to be comfortable with the fact that we get a handful of cards for the for our format every expansion. That's been the case for years now. It's not like anything to the contrary is a severe balance problem that needs to be like that needs some intervention. So like when that's not the case, people complain. So and complain louder. So it's just give it some time, wait and see. It takes a lot of especially novel cards with different mechanics or things like interactions that we haven't seen before. Take time to sort out, take time to tinker with before we can actually get an accurate assessment of them.
All right, so I think it's about time here for us to wrap up. Before we do, though, I do want to make sure to let people know that we do have a giveaway courtesy of Blizzard. So for all of you guys that, stick with us all the way to the end, you guys are getting rewarded with a little thing here that I didn't mention at the beginning. Totally not because I forgot, but we're going to ignore that. But we have a BlizzCon Legendary Bundle. Thanks to Blizzard to give away. Standard giveaway procedures. Make sure you guys just click that link down in the description. Like 2 or 3 questions that you guys have to answer, and then boom, you guys are entered to give into the giveaway. And I'll be picking that, later this week. But circling back to you guys, thanks for joining me. I know we're in the middle of card review season. You guys are gonna get a lot more episodes in the next couple of weeks than we have had. No week-long breaks this time. But thanks again for joining me. Hopefully, you guys are excited about the new stuff, and let the people know where they can find you guys in your content.
Yeah, you can find me as the newest member of the professional duels community in Hearthstone, streaming on Twitch and YouTube with daily 12-ish runs, win runs over on YouTube these days that have left me spending a lot of time editing.
I mean, if you round a number to 12, it's always 12 wins.
Yeah, you just round to the nearest 12.
The nearest 12. Perfect. You can find me at twitch.tv/Corbett or Corbettgames on YouTube and Twitter.
You guys can find me at GetMeowth on all those platforms. Thanks again for all of you guys that listen to every episode all the way to the end. Appreciate you guys a ton. And we'll see you guys again next time. Later.